Welcome back, everyone. This is my new Marvel X-Men video, our first legit X-Men project in Marvel Phase 4, coming to Disney Plus next year with a bunch of new episodes. So I'll explain what's going on and what's going on with the new X-Men movie that Marvel is still working on in the background right now, too. I will be doing episode videos for this when they start releasing them. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. We also have all the Marvel Super Bowl trailers coming this weekend for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and Moon Knight, maybe a couple other surprises. Whatever trailer footage they wind up releasing, of course I'll do videos for it, no worries.
I know how you feel about it, Wolverine, but...
You know nothing, little man.
But the big news you probably saw recently in your feeds and the X-Men teaser Marvel released a little while ago is that they're releasing 10 new episodes of X-Men the Animated Series. It's more of a continuation than an outright sequel series. It's only a sequel in that the events of the new episodes will take place a good time jump after the original X-Men the Animated Series finale. But you have to imagine a shinier looking version of the original animation. It'll look the same, just shiny HD 4K footage. It originally ran for 5 seasons. The reason why Marvel, Kevin Feige, are calling it X-Men 97, as you probably guessed, is because the series originally ended in September 1997 in real life. Some of you younger people watching this video might not have even been born yet when that happened. Don't we all feel old now? Disney Plus and Marvel have started greenlighting more and more animation, even some anime series if you can believe it. Marvel's What If is the best current example of that. I did videos for all those episodes, and they are working on What If Season 2 right now. It's also supposed to be released next year, just like the new X-Men episodes. If you've never seen X-Men the Animated Series, it is one of the classic all-time great animated comic book shows, just like Spider-Man the Animated Series. All those episodes are on Disney Plus. You can watch them all right now. The reason those shows had the same vibe to them, similar animation styles, is because they were both made to be part of Fox's animation block in the 90s. Fox ordered this massive chunk of episodes from a bunch of different people, including Batman the Animated Series, which was part of this animation block. So all that really classic, iconic animation that everybody remembers ran at the same time. Let me know in the comments if you actually watched those episodes when they originally aired after school days back in the 90s. X-Men the Animated Series was loosely based on the 90s X-Men comic book runs. That's why all the costumes look like the 90s X-Men comic book costumes. The 90s were when the X-Men comics were their peak of popularity. Normally, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman historically were the most popular characters around the world, but during the 90s, the X-Men really dominated. That's why the original X-Men 2000 movie was viewed as the beginning of the modern era of comic book movies, like the first big, splashy, mainstream, huge comic book movie. Blade technically predated it by a couple years, so it should get some credit, but it was rated R, so it wasn't quite as mainstream as the first X-Men movie in the sequels. But whereas X-Men the Animated Series tried to be as faithful as possible to the look and backstories of all those characters, in the movies, Hugh Jackman, for instance, said that Bryan Singer outlawed comic books on the set. So Kevin Feige actually got his start as an assistant producer on that first X-Men movie. This is baby Kevin Feige, if you can believe it. He had virtually no power at the time, so he couldn't go around and tell Bryan Singer, the other producers, to make the costumes or the story more comic book accurate at the time. But no joke, Hugh Jackman did say that Kevin Feige would sneak him Wolverine comics in his trailer between scenes just to give him some character references when he was creating his version of the Wolverine character. You have to picture Kevin Feige sneaking around the set of that original X-Men movie with a bag of comic books. The animated series covered most of the iconic X-Men stories. They did a really long version of the Dark Phoenix saga that was basically all of Season 3. They did a version of Age of Apocalypse. They did a version of Days of Future Past, all much more comic book accurate than the movie versions of those stories. For those of you that are still sad what they did to Oscar Isaac in Age of Apocalypse, don't worry, he's coming back as Marvel's MCU Moon Knight, and it is going to be badass. That's actually going to be the next big Disney Plus series to air after the Book of Boba Fett. Moon Knight will be like our next big thing, and I'll be doing videos for all those episodes. But all the new episodes will look the same as the old, like I said, just shinier HD versions, and all the original actors from the original series will be coming back to do the new episodes. If you didn't watch those episodes, just quick recap about how they ended that show. They did a flashback episode where Wolverine tells a story about fighting in World War II with Captain America before he became Wolverine. He was born in the early 1800s, and because of his healing factor, he wound up fighting in pretty much every major war around the world through Vietnam. Kevin Feige actually tried to do a version of that Captain America backstory in the first Captain America movie, using Hugh Jackman in a James Howlett cameo scene where Captain America was rescuing all the POWs and Howling Commandos. because he would have been there fighting with them in World War II. But Fox said no dice at the time because it was during their peak Hugh Jackman Wolverine period. It was when they were getting ready to do that X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. The TV show did a version of a Mr. Sinister origin story flashback to when he was still Nathaniel Essex. And in the original final episode, Professor X is almost killed and Lilandra from the Shi'ar Empire comes to rescue him by taking him back to her planet. Magneto is on his island Genosha with an army of the Mutant Brotherhood getting ready to conquer the world, but the X-Men convince him to stop out of respect for Professor X because he's dying. But the final ending scene of the show was all the main characters going to the X-Mansion saying goodbye to Professor X as he and Lilandra leave in her spaceship to go back to the Shi'ar homeworld and try and save his life. And that was it. That was the end of it. So the writers, the Marvel people, said that the first episodes will answer the question, where is Professor X after that time jump? In terms of big villains they could bring back, not counting Magneto because he's more of an anti-hero, Apocalypse, the Phoenix Force, and Mr. Sinister were the biggest villains that they had on the show. They'd already destroyed Apocalypse's celestial ship and destroyed his original body, but they kind of teased that he'd return to the physical plane to come back after them again.
Throughout the centuries, an elemental balance of power of good and evil has always denied me final victory. Until now!
Cool connection to Marvel's Eternals movie that some of you may have realized. In the Eternals movie, they explain more about the Celestials' cosmic history. Apocalypse got all of his advanced tech from the Celestials by striking a bargain with them. That's why he has such advanced hypertech in ancient Egypt. He's not a time traveler like Kang the Conqueror, but when they were covering Apocalypse's backstory in the show, they did a version of Kang. They just called him the Bender, but it was the Immortus version of Kang, just from the look of him, who became more of a guardian of the timeline. He Who Remains Kang during the Loki series was kind of like the MCU version of Immortus Kang. Kang at the end of his own timeline when he became a little less evil. They could always introduce another big X-Men villains from the comics, but it's only supposed to be one final run of 10 episodes, as I believe, so mostly I think they'll just be wrapping up all the pre-existing storylines with the major villains that they already have. We'll get a full trailer next year, probably around the same time we get some footage for What If Season 2. For those of you asking about the live-action X-Men movie that Marvel's still working on now, they've been working on it for a little while. The working title is just called The Mutants. I'm not crazy about the title, but they might wind up changing it before the movie actually comes out. The reason why they're just calling it The Mutants is because it won't be a carbon copy reboot of the Fox X-Men movies. It won't be the exact same path for the way they evolve those characters, but it'll still be very comic book accurate. Like a very different looking version of an X-Men movie that is still very comic book accurate. Based on the current Marvel Phase 4, Marvel Phase 5 movie schedule, they won't be able to release it till at least 2025. The closest thing to an MCU X-Men movie we're going to get before that is Deadpool 3. There are rumors about other mutants showing up in other Marvel Phase 4 movies before that, so we will see mutants in the MCU before they do a legit X-Men movie. But as you probably guessed, Marvel is using a couple different methods for explaining mutants and X-Men in the MCU. Multiverse and mutants being created inside the main MCU universe. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is supposed to have some Fox X-Men cameo scenes. Think of it like Spider-Man No Way Home with all the multiverse explainers, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man versions, and their villains from the multiverse. Kevin Feige didn't recast new versions of those villains because they were all so great. He said he never even considered doing Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man Homecoming or Spider-Man Far From Home with different MCU versions of the characters because he always wanted it to be Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina. And it's going to be the same thing with some of the Fox X-Men characters, but a lot of the multiverse X-Men versions just depend on which actors are willing to come back. But everyone post all your theories in the comments below. If some of the X-Men come from the multiverse and some come from inside the MCU, how do you think they'll explain the ones inside the MCU that have been around this whole time? Really important reminder, my Book of Boba Fett Episode 7 finale video will post next, and my Marvel Super Bowl trailers will start posting this weekend. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss those. Everyone click here for my brand new Marvel Daredevil video, and click here for my full Moon Knight trailer video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.